April 11th, 2019, Shannon Higgins was standing on his front porch when he heard a loud disturbance coming from the mobile home next door. He immediately called 911. He told the dispatcher, "I was standing out on my porch. I heard very violent yelling. I heard people striking each other, yelling and screaming. I still hear a woman screaming. Whatever's going on in that house is not good right now." Then his neighbors come outside and they start fighting in the yard. As Shannon waited for the police, he watched as his male neighbor pushed the female neighbor back into the home and shut the door. Shortly after, the Wichita, Kansas police arrive at the home. Officers found the couple in question, 26-year-old Patrick Jonovich and 22-year-old Brandy Kai Merchant. But at this point, the couple was no longer fighting and they were actually out walking around the neighborhood. So the officers separated the couple for questioning. They had only been living in this mobile home for a couple of months. Brandy told police that Patrick was upset with her and got into an argument because she had slept the day away while he was at work. Now, it was very cold outside, around 40 degrees. Now, Brandy was wearing shorts, and she complained to the officers that she was cold, but she refused to let them go inside her home. She claimed the house was messy. Meanwhile, Patrick told the police that Brandy was agitated and upset by a child that wouldn't stop crying. Now, his claims were supported by a text message Brandy sent him the day before, which read, "I am losing it. I need to stay somewhere. Zayden just won't stop. I can't even watch effing TV." Brandy claimed she gave him 3 bags of oatmeal, 2 things of yogurt, and he is still screaming. Now, the police claim this was the first they'd heard about children being present in this home. But later, we find out that's not entirely true. So the police officers asked if they could do a well check on the children, and Patrick agreed to let them inside the home. But Patrick told the police officers, "Don't wake up the children." Trigger warning, this is where we start talking about the abuse. A police officer heard a baby cooing in another room. The police officer discovered a 4-month-old baby named Ty. Baby Ty was under a pillow in his crib. The baby was lodged under a pillow against the side of the crib and mattress. He was surrounded by pillows, stuffed animals, and other dangerous hazards. Officer noted the baby was very small for his age and could not control his head. Now, later at the hospital, doctors determined that Ty was 4 months old and only weighed 8 pounds. He was severely underweight. The average 4-month-old baby weighs anywhere from 13 to 17 pounds, possibly more. Ty weighed the same thing as a newborn. In addition to being extremely malnourished, Ty's left ear was severely bruised, black, green, and blue, and the left side of his jaw was extremely swollen. Ty also had 2 broken ribs that were in the process of healing that were possibly broken 2 weeks prior. Medical staff determined Ty's injuries to be abusive in nature and in addition to the neglect. Ty had a severe diaper rash, and when I say severe, I mean it was bad. Baby Ty also had a yeast infection. Now, baby Ty was born with drugs in his system. Why didn't CPS step in at that point? Again, trigger warning. A second police officer located 2-year-old Zayden, who was face down in his vomit. The tiny child was swaddled tightly in a blanket and was not moving. Zayden's skin was cold to the touch. Officers unwrapped the blanket and found that Zayden was wearing a footy pajama piece with a zipper that goes up the front. Zayden's arms were not in the sleeves of these pajamas. Instead, his arms were trapped inside the garment against his body tightly. Sleeves had been tied in a knot up here. Police quickly unzipped the pajamas and found that Zayden's body was covered in bruises. The bruises and whelps were black, blue, green, and purple in color. The officers cleared Zayden's airway with baby wipes they found nearby, and they tried performing CPR until the ambulance arrived. But it was far too late and Zayden was pronounced dead. His autopsy revealed abrasions and scrapes inside and outside of his lips, more abrasions on his nose, contusions, bruises, and scrapes on his head and torso. Doctors determined the abrasions on his lips were consistent with someone forcing his face onto something by pushing on the back of his head. By the time they found Zayden, he was already in the early stages of decomposition, which means he passed several hours before the police had even been called. Zayden should have weighed 28 pounds or more at the time of his death, but he only weighed 14 pounds. Both children were severely underweight by about half of what they should have weighed at their age. Police searched the home and could not find any food. The refrigerator, the cabinets, the shelves, all empty. Of course, Patrick told the police that he fed Zayden that morning before he went to work, and that when he returned home from work, he didn't see Zayden, and he didn't know he was dead. So Brandy claims, Wednesday, April the 10th, she and Zayden had been feeling poorly for several days. Before putting him to bed that evening, she fed him oatmeal, yogurt, and chocolate milk. And that before she went to bed, she restrained her 2-year-old son inside his pajamas to prevent him from pulling himself out of the playpen and crying at her door. After restraining him, she went to bed around 6 a.m. A police affidavit stated that she had not seen either child throughout the entire day and was unaware that Zayden had even died. So on this day, Brandy and Patrick were arrested. They got 5 charges including first-degree murder, neglect and abuse of a child, aggravated endangerment of a child, and soon after, baby Ty was removed from their custody. Ty was taken to the hospital in critical condition. We find out Patrick is not even Ty's biological father. That father didn't get to know his baby because Brandy kept playing games with him and refused to let him see his child. But then the shocking truth comes out. A total of 22 911 calls were made involving Patrick and Brandy from November of 2017 through April of 2019. Some of these calls were placed by Brandy and Patrick themselves. Other calls were placed by bystanders, neighbors, and family. In March of 2018, Patrick's mother, Donna Lloyd, called 911. Donna told 911 that Brandy had pushed Patrick and knocked his head through a wall. Donna also said, Brandy slapped my 11-month-old grandbaby, and you guys came out and didn't do a damn thing about it. That baby was over here for 2 days with her fingerprints on his face. He's only 11 months old. This has been ongoing. He's lost 3 jobs because she'll call the job and tell him to come home, or she's gonna unalive the baby. Donna said, you'll see the bite mark because he's in his underwear with no shirt on. Donna said, Brandy is banging her head on the wall. She grabbed a weapon and is threatening to blank herself. 911 just played it off like it wasn't a big deal. Well, it's dangerous to me, and it's a dangerous environment for my grandbabies. In 2019, just 2 months prior to Zayden's death, an argument was overheard during which Patrick cursed Brandy out and accused her of cheating. Then you can hear a scuffle in which Brandy cries out for help, and you hear Patrick say, here's your phone, here's your phone. Several calls were made to CPS before Zayden's death, and Patrick's older daughter told CPS that Brandy had been threatening to hurt Zayden. And those calls were connected to an allegation where Brandy threatened to blank herself in front of the children. That CPS report was made in 2017. CPS had been called multiple times on this couple. But of course, CPS found the child's statements to be untrue and they closed the case. Brandy and her newborn baby Ty both tested positive for MJ. And nothing further was done. This is an ongoing problem with CPS and the police department. Children are often ignored, even when they're the ones making that statement to their teacher, their friend, or their family, or to a CPS caseworker. We get the excuse, well, they're a kid. How do I know they're telling the truth? Well, I say you believe all claims made by children until you can prove it's a lie. Ty's biological father says the baby is doing good now. He is able to hold down his food. He is reacting to lights and sounds. Baby Ty is expected to make a full recovery. I think it's time we fire anyone who neglects a case like this and ban them from working in any other department. I think it is time for new updated training in DSS and CPS departments. And it is time for updated training in police departments as well. This is not a case of bystander syndrome. Everyone around them tried to do something to help these children. But it was the system who failed these kids. You gotta think, 22 calls to 911 and police departments from 2017 to 2019. That's a lot. And those are the calls that we know about. Imagine what we don't know. It is time for a big change in this country. America has got to step up and do something about the abuse and the corruption within CPS and foster care system, and within the adoption agencies as well. America has a big problem with child abuse and neglect and domestic violence. It is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And literally, none of our politicians will do anything about it. None of our politicians even talk about the CPS corruption. I want to know, why is that? Why don't our politicians, our governors, our senators, our president even? We haven't even had a president address the corruption of CPS. It's just too much negligence on their behalf. It is time for change. Y'all, I know these videos are really hard to watch. And trust me, it's hard for me to research and read these cases on a daily basis. But it has to be done. These children are silenced. These cases and these children are falling through the cracks. They're not being heard. And justice is not being served. It is time we start helping the children who are already here. The children who have thoughts and feelings and can feel pain. Those are the kids that we need to be focused on. This couple was only sentenced to 27 years in prison for these crimes. That's a big problem. When you give them such a light sentence, you devalue this child and what happened. This is a very serious crime, and it shows other parents that they can get away with this too. That's not right. We have to set an example that you will not get away with something like this, that you will face harsh punishment if you do these types of things to your children.